Hello and welcome back to another video. So on Tuesday night, Illinois held their primary elections and we had some pretty interesting results on the Democratic side, including a proxy war between the left and AIPAC. And if you don't know what AIPAC is the biggest biggest pro-Israel lobby in the United States. They heavily push pro-Israel interests among members of Congress, and there is basically a proxy war going on in the Democratic Party right now between progressives and AIPAC. So we're going to get to that, but first I want to take a look at the results for the Democratic primary for the U.S. Senate race in Illinois. So Senator Dick Durbin, he's a Democrat from Illinois. He is retiring, and there was a open primary for his seat. And the winner is Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton. She defeated Congressman Raja Krishnamurthy and Congresswoman Robin Kelly. Now, Juliana Stratton, she is the lieutenant governor. She was heavily backed and funded by Illinois' Governor J.B. Pritzker. Raja Krishnamurthy, he spent $30 million on this race only to lose. He was backed by crypto groups. He's more of a centrist establishment type candidate. And Robin Kelly, she was the most progressive candidate in this race. However, Juliana Stratton is fairly progressive. So this win right here, this was a win for the left wing of the Democratic Party, as Stratton represented the younger, more progressive wing, whereas Krishnamurthy was the more establishment, pro-crypto, pro-Israel wing of the party. And this just goes to show that J.B. Pritzker's influence over Illinois politics is only growing. He is running for a third term as governor, and he's been talked about as being a 2028 presidential candidate. So I thought this was a pretty interesting race. But we had a lot of open House seats in Illinois, which had some very interesting results that I want to talk about. And we're going to start off with Illinois' 2nd Congressional District, where you had former Congressman Jesse Jackson Jr. He went to prison and he was trying to make a comeback bid for Congress, and he lost. He only got 29% of the vote. He lost to Donna Miller. Donna Miller was actually backed by AIPAC, so this race here was a win for AIPAC, for the Israel lobby. However, Jesse Jackson did go to prison. He has a history of corruption, so he wasn't exactly a great candidate either. The progressive candidate in this race was Robert Peters. However, he only got 12% of the vote, so AIPAC did win this race. However, there weren't very many good options here that were viable. And then in Illinois' 7th Congressional District, AIPAC actually lost here. So Melissa Conyers-Ervin, she was backed by AIPAC. LaShawn Ford, he is a progressive candidate. The race has not yet been called. However, it seems very likely that LaShawn Ford is going to come out on top in the 7th Congressional District's Democratic primary with around 24% of the vote. So this here is a loss for AIPAC. And then in the 8th Congressional District, Melissa Bean beat Junaid Ahmed. Melissa Bean is a former Democratic Congresswoman. She was first elected in 2004 and narrowly defeated in the 2010 red wave. She lost to former Congressman Joe Walsh. Melissa Bean, when she was in Congress, she was a very conservative Democrat. She voted for the Iraq War. She was one of 9 Democrats to vote for tax cuts on capital gains, and she voted to extend the Bush tax cuts and repeal the estate tax. So she is a very conservative Democrat. However, she will now represent a district that Kamala Harris won by 8 percentage points, whereas previously she had to flip a Bush plus 12 district in 2004. So the district she's going to be representing this time around is going to be a lot bluer. So it is possible that this time she's not going to be as conservative. She will be more liberal, but we'll have to see. Junaid Ahmed was the more progressive candidate. However, Melissa Bean was backed by AIPAC, so AIPAC did win this race in the 8th congressional district. And then in Illinois' 9th congressional district, we had a pretty interesting race. So Daniel Biss, he is the mayor of Evanston, Illinois. He's fairly progressive. In fact, he was endorsed by Elizabeth Warren, Greg Casar, Pramila Jayapal, and the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Now, Kat Abu-Ghazaleh, she was even more progressive than Daniel Biss. She was endorsed by Bernie Sanders, AOC, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib. So she's even further to the left of Daniel Biss. She narrowly did lose to Biss by 4%. However, I do think her performance was fairly impressive considering she's fairly new to the district. She's never held political office before, and she placed second out of 15 candidates. State Senator Laura Fine, she was the AIPAC-backed candidate in this district. She finished in third place with around 20% of the vote. So the two progressive candidates finished in the top two, and Daniel Biss, who is backed by Elizabeth Warren, he is a progressive, just not as progressive as Kat Abu-Ghazaleh. Daniel Biss did win this race, so this was a win for progressives and a loss for AIPAC. So looking at the 4 competitive House primaries in Illinois, the 9th congressional district as well as the 7th congressional district, AIPAC was defeated by progressives. However, in the 2nd district and in the 8th district, AIPAC did elect their preferred candidate. So what this goes to show is that at least in the Democratic primary, progressives have been able to beat back against AIPAC's influence. They have not won every race. In fact, so far they've been splitting the races 50-50. Progressives won 2 of these House races. AIPAC won 2 of them as well. So, but in the Senate primary, AIPAC was given a pretty handy defeat. And a Senate seat, as you know, is very important. But of course, these House races are important as well. So ultimately, I think what this shows is that AIPAC's influence in the Democratic Party is severely weakening. And another thing to note is that in a lot of cases when AIPAC ran ads promoting these pro-Israel candidates, those ads, they didn't specifically mention that these candidates were pro-Israel, but they talked about other policy details to back these candidates. So even when AIPAC is spending money to help pro-Israel candidates, they're not running on pro-Israel platforms because they know that Israel is very unpopular among the Democratic primary right now, or among the Democratic primary voters, among the Democratic base. And this just goes to show, once again, that Israel's influence and the Israel lobby's influence is severely weakening within the Democratic Party, and anti-Israel sentiment is at an all-time high right now, and pro-Palestinian sentiment is also at an all-time high right now. So we'll have to see if the Republican Party shows similar signs, if Republican voters reject pro-Israel influence, but for now the Democratic Party has seemed to begun to do so. So if you guys enjoyed this video, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe, turn on post notifications so that you don't miss a future upload. Please comment any video ideas or suggestions that you may have in the comments section, and I will see you all in the next video.